Hello, everybody. Welcome to our review of Us, the second film from Oscar-winning. It's like nice to say Oscar-winning writer-director Jordan Peele.
Yes.
It's follow-up to Get Out, obviously, a big hit from a couple of years ago. I'm Dan Murrell.
I'm Roth Cornet. And the interesting thing about this, Dan, is though Jordan Peele has obviously been a creator for a long time, both as a writer and a performer, this is still the film that people will be looking at as the sophomore film, right? The thing that's because Get Out was such a phenomenon, both critically acclaimed and obviously a box office hit as well. I think it was the highest ROI that year that it came out of any film. So return on investment, meaning like for what it cost, it made the most money comparatively. So that I think puts a lot of pressure on this film, and also with the new Twilight Zone series coming out from him. Oh, he is now officially a horror director. With all that in mind, what did you think?
I really, really liked this movie. And I think that the idea of the sophomore film is an interesting one because I think a lot of people might look at this, even though Unbreakable was not M. Night Shyamalan's second film, technically, it was his first big film after Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
So in a lot of people's minds, that's the second M. Night Shyamalan movie. And we were just talking about how neither one of us like to watch or read reviews for films before we review it because we want to just not be influenced by anything. But there were some reactions I saw on social media, a few of them. A lot of people liked the movie, and then I saw a few reactions that were saying like, well, you know, I was disappointed because I didn't know what he was trying to say. I thought the message was very muddled, etc. And I do feel like this movie might suffer a little bit coming from Get Out because when this is someone's second major film, a lot of people will frame it only in the terms of what your first film was.
Right.
And so for me, I thought this was a really well executed. It is a horror suspense, and I think it's equal parts both.
I agree.
I would not call it a straight up horror film.
I agree, and that's one of the things that, so two things. Want to separate concerns around marketing from actual review.
Yeah.
So actual review, I really like the film as well. I think it's interesting to think about it in context of along with Get Out, because it does feel like a sister film. He's clearly very interested in identity. I think this film, more so than Get Out, should not be looked at literally in certain aspects. I think it needs to really be looked at as a metaphor. It is incredibly creepy in moments, very, very creepy sequences. One of the things that happened in the first 3 moments I wondered if you noticed and would appreciate was that there was a setup and a perfect opportunity for a jump scare, and he cut away and didn't do it. And I think for me that set the tone for what he was doing for the rest of the film. He told you in that moment, this is not your standard horror movie. This isn't about jump scares. I'm not trying to get you. I am trying to pull you into this universe and let this story unfold that really is about identity and really is about a metaphor for the United States and what it is in a lot of ways culturally. That said, what I worry about is that traditionally with horror movies, and particularly with horror fans, if something is set up in a particular way to be a very traditionally horror movie and it doesn't fulfill that, horror fans don't always react well. I hope they like this one.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of came at it. It hit me a little differently in the sense that there is definitely a lot of metaphor going on in this film, and a lot of. I think people can take a lot of different meanings from it.
Sure.
But where I thought some of the criticisms that I saw that it was, the message was unclear, quote unquote. To me, this was much less of a message movie, and I don't think of Get Out as a message movie, but it had a very sharp, clear deconstruction of American society, several of them inside of it. I mean, that's one of the reasons it won the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay.
Yeah.
And I felt that this was much more of a genre film, certainly full of metaphor and a lot of different interpretation that you can bring to it. And I liked the deepness and the richness of the film. But I almost see it from the other way, which is that people that go into this expecting another great societal metaphor or a great treatise on any number of issues might not find what they're looking for, because I found this to be much more of just a straightforward suspense thriller movie with a lot of deep, rich layers underneath, but not quite that same powerful just punch to the gut that Get Out had. But I feel like in the way that it felt to me a little bit like when Unbreakable came out, a lot of people went and saw it, and they'd only seen Sixth Sense, and they were expecting this huge
twist.
He's a ghost twist, and Unbreakable certainly had an element to the storytelling that you didn't know until the end that reframed the movie, but it wasn't that big moment. And a lot of people came out of that movie saying like, oh, well, I was disappointed in the twist. And it wasn't until later that people learned to sort of say like, well, we shouldn't look at it just from the what's the twist angle, look at it more in its genre. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of that going on with us, where people are expecting this huge statement film. And this is really just much more of a stylistic exercise in suspense, but deeper than the average movie.
I think it's cool that that's what you took from it. And I think that one of the things that tells me about this movie is that people are going to be able to take a lot of different things from it, and that there's a lot available to you. Unbreakable, going on that analogy, is my favorite of M. Night's films for a lot of reasons, but really the primary reason is that it's not predicated entirely on the twist, that the story is told well, that it's a clear story and great characters, and it's not about this trick that he's playing on you, which I think is one of the things that I don't particularly love about some of the other films, that it's just resting so hardcore on this trick. For me, Get Out was a great movie. It was a great genre movie, and it also sort of had commentary baked in. I think Us, for me, is the same, that it's a really cool genre movie that, like I said, even in that moment where he essentially leads you right into a jump scare and then pulls it back and does not do it, which I think that there's a tension and release inherent in that, and that Jordan Peele, for me as a filmmaker, what I really like about him, one of the things I really like about him, is that he so smartly knows when to play into and against tropes. And for me, he's never doing it. He doesn't veer too much in one way or the other, which means if something is playing into it, it becomes incredibly predictable too much. If you're playing against it, that becomes predictable in its own right. And both of them feel like they're not in service of the story. This feels like every moment was in service of the story. I will say there is a twist here that, for me, was clear from very early on in the movie. But that said, that didn't detract at all the fact that I presumed that this circumstance in this twist was going to happen. Didn't detract. It actually added to the tension for me in the film.
See, I'm a big dum-dum, because that's my girlfriend said the same thing. She's like, oh, well, I thought that this might be the thing, and then I was just like, I guess I'm a big dummy, because I did not.
You're not a dum-dum.
I'm not, but I guess part of it is like I don't. A lot of times, especially a movie, like beyond the structure of it and the writing of the film, I was just sucked in by the style of it. It's so well shot and paced and edited. The tone, it's a mixture of tones, but it doesn't feel off. It has some very funny comedic moments, has some very funny satirical moments, but it also has great moments of straight up horror. There are some jump scares in this that are really effective, just like straight up horror. Great moments of suspense. There's mystery. There's a lot of different things going into this movie that I just sort of, when I'm sitting in a movie that I really, really like, I turn my brain off in the way that's the opposite of what a lot of people say I should do with like a Transformers movies, in the sense that like I just let it sort of wash over me, and I get completely sucked into the movie, and I don't really sit there trying to deduce different things or be like, oh, I wonder if that's gonna, like, I just sort of go along for the ride, and in retrospect I'll go back to the movie and go like, oh, well, yeah, obviously I should have, my brain's just not in that mode at the particular time. So I think you're right in the sense that there are some things in the film that share more similarities with Get Out, maybe in the sense of going deeper. But at the same time, for me, this was much less. While I was watching Get Out, I was also thinking about the movie actively while I was watching it. And this one was much more of, I'm just enjoying a great movie. And then after the movie, I start dissecting it and go like, oh, okay, that was interesting. It's why I'm looking forward to a second viewing of the film.
Yeah, and it's funny, I heard some people talking about it on the way out of the theater, and that's how they were talking about it, which I think speaks very well for the film. But for me, I will say that again, I just want to be clear that the twist, I did see it very early on. because there were particular, but it wasn't, I don't think that that wasn't purposeful. I think there were very clear character traits that were on display. I think there were very clear choices that were made. I think it's smart of a filmmaker to tell you what you're watching. And it's the adaptation rule. He tells you what you're going to watch, and then he shows it to you, but he does it in a way that you're still satisfied and surprised at the end by some of the choices, right? So what it did for me was it added an element. Understanding that this is really what was in play, added an element of, well, I don't know what this character is going to do as a result of that, or what their behavioral choices might be, or what it really means for the people around us. Hard to talk about this a little bit without spoilers, but I will say that a couple of things. The performances, Lupita Nyong'o, Winston Duke, are phenomenal. I think they play and also the kids in this film play each person has to play two distinct characters, and they really are distinct. And they really are, especially for Lupita Nyong'o, there's a layer there for her in the two characters that she's playing that makes it very complicated, and it's so well done. Winston Duke in one role is the perfect, like, bad dad joke dad, and you just love him and you have so much empathy for him, and then is incredibly menacing in this other character. That's not giving anything away. You can obviously see that from the trailers. And I do think that there is beautiful, beautiful work here, and that's what we mean, like playing into and against the tropes. There are a couple of jump scares later, but because he didn't do it the first most obvious time, they actually were much more effective. And that's what I mean about how smart he is about when he does it and when he doesn't, because it keeps you on your toes as a viewer. It keeps you engaged. It keeps the tension and the stakes high. For me, there are a number of metaphors that'll be hard to talk about here, but certainly one of them is the idea of your underbelly rising up, your own cultural underbelly rising up. That's one. And then two, and your own personal sort of demons and underbellies rising up and your sins rising up. That's one. And then the second one is sort of like who we are is not defined by our birth is another huge piece that I took away from the film. But all of that aside, it's just creepy. It's like very well done horror and creepy suspense horror.
Right. I think what it is it's a film that works on a literal level.
Yes.
That just take away any deeper meaning. It works just on an absolute literal level of, like, these are the actions that we are showing you on screen.
Yes.
It works.
Yes.
It has an added meaning that you can take so much away from if that is the way that you interpret films. If you are someone who looks for that meaning is 100% there as well, which I think is great. I love movies like that. And what this does for me is this cements Jordan Peele as one of the most exciting and talented filmmakers working today.
Yeah.
I know it's only two films, but I think these were two, for my money, great films. These are two movies that I loved. They're different enough that I'm not saying like, well, he can do this, but can he do anything else? Like, I think while these films share a lot of similarities, they're also different in a lot of different ways. I really am excited to see the next 20, 30, 40 years of work that he has in him, because I've loved both of his first two movies, and I think these are two of the most impressive two debut films from a director that I've seen in a really long time.
I agree with you. I think all of it is there, and that's what's cool about the movie, right? It's also kind of a cool sci-fi conceit, frankly, baked in there, which speaks to me, which bodes very well for the Twilight Zone, right? Because the Twilight Zone was exactly that. It was this mix of horror, suspense, science fiction, and certainly cultural commentary was in all of them. And that's what Jordan Peele does so well. And I agree with you. I think it's neither of those films, Get Out nor Us, is a message film in the sense that that's why it exists, or it's beating it was one of the purposes, but it's not beating you over the head with it. But I do think there's something really fascinating here about just like the idea of like this metaphor for suppression and the subconscious and suppression of your the sins of your past. All of that is there for you, and identity. All of these other larger kind of themes are there to unpack in this film. And I think one of the things that I love about it, there's a visual image towards the end of the film that ties into something that he set up in the beginning of the film. And it's so brilliantly done because it is the exact thing. It seems like a very nonsensical choice that the character has made. But it is the exact thing that the character in those circumstances would have done. So as a writer, I think he is really, really, really smart about how he takes a journey, particularly with character work. And boy, this is well cast. There's nobody in this film that is not absolutely on their A game.
And as a fan of Tim and Eric, it's great to see Tim Heidecker in a role that is both perfect for him, and also that you're like, whoa. Okay, that's a new side of it. Elizabeth Moss.
Always great. The twists and the turns are there.
Yeah. This is a big recommendation for me. I really liked this film. And I think it's the perfect hybrid. I think if people just want to go and be scared and go on a date and, you know, grip the arm. For me, it's me gripping my girlfriend's arm because I'm a wimp when it comes to horror movies.
We were sitting next to each other. Dan was gripping his girlfriend as I was leaning over and gripping my boyfriend.
If you want to take your significant other and whoever the gripper is in your relationship.
We're both grippers.
Exactly. We're both grippers. So it's great for that. If you want to go. Yeah, they're grippies. Apologies. But if you want to go and just go and have a movie that you can chew over and go out to dinner afterwards to talk about, it's that too. Big recommendation for me.
And if you just want to look at some great filmmaking, man, I mean, like, there's a couple of shots in there. I think we might have to do a spoiler review on this one too, because you'll have to forgive my evasiveness in saying there is this one visual moment, but there really is, and you'll see it when you see the film, which you will do. See this film, highly recommend it, and we may be talking more in spoilers to come.
Definitely.
Jordan Peele. Dan, more reviews coming.
More reviews coming. There will be a review this weekend for Shazam. There's some fan screenings going out this weekend for Shazam, which means that we actually get to post our review a little bit earlier than a lot of other movies. So check out the Shazam review this weekend. And then we're always here talking movies.
We're talking about movies all the time. We love movies. And so do you. Let us know what you think of us when you see the film. Did you look at it literally, figuratively, both? Did you just get scared and have fun? Are you a gripper or a grippy? That's the most important question. Let us know.